This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Audible. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Wednesday, February 23rd, 2022, and I've got the excellent Ryne Hager of Android Police here with me. Hi, Ryne. How are you?
Good, Miriam. How are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing peachy well. I'm getting ready to fly out to MWC tomorrow. So I'm juggling a million things. That's also why we're doing the podcast on Wednesday and not later in the week. But there'll be more next week, folks. So
you're getting out there early. Doesn't start till next week.
Well, press stuff, getting acclimatized, lots of ifs. Like, international travel. It's not my first time leaving the country during COVID, but I know there's a lot of forms to fill and paperwork. You'd be surprised how bureaucratic the whole process is. So I figure, we're heading a bit into the unknown, even though I've done MWC for over a decade before COVID. There's a lot has changed in terms of accreditation, using the app. Now there's no longer badges. You have to kind of jump through a whole bunch of hoops, even after you get to Barcelona. So, I just want to relax. I don't want. Yeah. Also, I get there, I sleep, I catch up a little bit on jet lag, get some local sims. And then most importantly, I sit down and do the schedule because I'm one of those people who does this at the very last minute. Some people are not going to get to see me because I will prioritize other things because that's what happens when you're a team of one or two in this case. But Theo's coming. Anyway, I want to talk to you about gaming phones because I have thoughts. What about you?
I've got a few opinions on the subject, and my opinion has changed, which might be interesting.
Well, let's start with that. What has changed for you before we dive into the details?
Well, I used to think gaming phones were sort of superfluous, because even with my Android-centric focus, you look at the hardware and the games that come to each platform, and you can't. I never really felt that you could make the straight, bold-faced claim that Android was a gaming platform compared to iOS. If you want the best gaming phone, you should just get an iPhone. It has a better GPU. More of the games are exclusive to its platform than to Android. There's really not a whole lot of reason to buy a dedicated Android phone just to play games in my mind. But my opinion has changed in the last year, and I think that not only have the devices themselves started to kind of mature, even if the software is still universally pretty trash. But the market is growing more than I thought it would. I thought it was just something they were trying to make stick. Manufacturers were hoping this was going to happen, but they actually saw the rise of mobile gaming in emerging markets in Indonesia and China, in India, that really are sustaining this. And coupled with Google's renewed focus on bringing mobile games to Windows, with I can't remember the name of what it was called, and Qualcomm's reference design to bring a mobile gaming device to. I mean, still, it's just a reference design. It's for developers. But I think we're going to see products based off of it as well. So between all of these different things that are occurring, I don't think it's just a fad, and I don't think it's just some dumb thing that manufacturers are trying to make happen. I think this is real. It's legit. It's growing. And it might actually turn Android into the sort of gaming platform that people might have wanted it to be when this started. It could actually happen now.
Yeah, honestly, I agree with you. I think, it's a little short-sighted to say you just buy an iPhone because in many markets, the iPhone is way more expensive than these gaming phones, number one. And number two, you do need accessories with the iPhone. I mean, realistically, you could argue you still need some sort of clamp thing that gives you manual sticks and stuff that, hugs your phone, right? For an Android as well. But for an iPhone, you pretty much need that because you're not getting shoulder buttons, which at least I think are a minimum requirement if you're going to have a gaming phone, right? And then, some of the cooling solution we're seeing now, arguably, again, the iPhone has extremely good thermals, but, these new chips like the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 get warm, and if you cool them a little better, they really can do a great job in terms of performance. I guess that segues into my RedMagic 7 review, because what blew my mind the most about this phone is how good the thermals are, considering so far all the few flagships we've tested with Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 have throttled like crazy. Now, you use them day to day and they're fine. Battery life is great. You know, they perform well even if you play like demanding games. But if you're playing like for a few hours or even a few minutes in a row, long term, you're going to suffer on a Galaxy S22 of some kind, right? Or OnePlus 10 Pro. I mean, the Chinese model, I haven't tested, but I've seen, you know, Enobong's video on Board at Work that really shows it. And so I experienced it with the S22 Ultra in my testing and the S22 Plus. But here on the RedMagic 7, like even with the fan turned off, I was only hitting 92% of max performance after 20 minutes, which is amazing. And then with the fan on, I was hitting 96%. I've never seen that kind of thermal performance, even on previous RedMagic phones. So we're nerding out here, but what it means for those of you who don't know is that basically, you know, these chips are staying cool in these phones and you're getting the maximum possible performance out of the phone for as long as you're playing. And I think that's the big deal with esports gamers, for example, who, you know, they're not just playing, you know, a quick game here and there while they're waiting in line at the bank or something, right? They're actually like competitive players or whatever, or they play a lot. And yeah, they're going to probably run out of battery pretty quick, but that's why these phones can also charge while they game and do that well. So, but anyway, you know, the RedMagic 7, if I had to summarize, is the same kind of thing that's RedMagic's been doing. Great value, great hardware, fan cooling built in. So it's got a built-in 20,000 RPM fan. It's got, you know, really good specs, but then, you know, the cameras are just kind of there. Actually, they're pretty decent on paper and there's a decent chip there. So I think it's just a software issue. And again, the software in general, you know, is pretty abysmal. It's gotten a lot better. I didn't get too many bugs this time around. It's just, it's very disjointed and very aesthetically weird and generally just not pleasant to use. Their game mode, though, is pretty solid in terms of features. And once you wrap your head around the user interface, it's fine. I just feel like, you know, there was a time, and I wrote this article actually, I think maybe on Android Police, about should you buy a gaming phone if you want to save money and just have a flagship? Like, you're not a gamer, you want a flagship, you want that performance, you want those specs. And the takeaway was no, maybe at worst, but no at best, because you're going to sacrifice on imaging and that software. And again, I have asked RedMagic, I have actually asked RedMagic PR, can you tell me what your update policy is on OS and security? And they were unable to answer that.
Yeah. A lot of people don't realize that, like, even though these things have great hardware, you're compromising quite a lot on software, and software penetrates into so many different things, it can have a bigger impact than you think.
And personally, I get it because you're a gamer, you want the latest chip, you're going to buy a new phone in a year, right? But what if the software is so bad, like it is on the RedMagics, that you need bug fixes and they're not going to deliver them? That's the big issue. That's why I want them to issue some sort of commitment for software updates, right?
Yeah, that would be a good thing to do, but it might be asking a little bit much. A lot of these companies, not necessarily with the RedMagic, but like if we end up talking about the Black Shark, some of them like to debut new devices based on old hardware, partly to save money. And that probably has an impact on the software update schedule as well.
For sure, yeah. So basically, you know, my reviews on hot hardware, I'll link it in the show notes. You know, it's $629 for a Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 flagship with US 5G bands here today. I mean, starts March 10th, the orders. But, like, that's impressive. But again, you know, unless you value user experience and cameras, you know, that's about the only reason why. I mean, if you value those things, you're not going to buy that. You're going to buy a Galaxy S22 or something else. And if you don't value those, then, you know, yeah, maybe if all you're doing, this is a second phone for you and all you're doing is gaming, 100%. That's my take.
Sounds about right to me.
Yeah. So, you know, in general, I feel like, can we get the gaming phone people to just improve the software a little bit and the camera experience, can you at least reach Moto level, which I know is a low bar, but I'm asking if we can get to Moto's level of camera performance? Because then, I mean, I would be much more gung-ho about recommending these phones to people, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that part of the reason is they want to be cutthroat about pricing, and software is one of the most expensive things you can do in a product like this, is developing software.
Right.
So if the only solution I can really think of is if they were able to, I don't know, license an OS from another partner.
But you know, they're part of big group. Like Nubia makes phones, and they're part of the ZTE greater zeitgeist of companies. And like they have access to good imaging stacks. I mean, not the best, but they're there. And then, you know, the other thing I don't understand is like if you look at the game space on the RedMagic, that's really well thought out and well made. And other than the weird translations, which is fine, that's easy to fix again, but they'll never issue a software update, so you won't get fixes. But it's still like, they've optimized the software to really take advantage of that Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 experience and to really optimize the fan performance and stuff. So they're spending some money on software. I'm not asking them to like give us a Galaxy or Pixel or like iPhone level of imaging here, but can you give us at least like, I don't know, mid-range Xiaomi level of imaging? That would be nice. And I feel like you can just buy that white labeled from someone, you know?
Especially now that Qualcomm is licensing out some of their camera processing tech. I know you've always had the base processing that's in CAF, which is presumably what their software is based off of. But now Qualcomm's like straight up licensing. Here's camera processing tech. You pay us, you can use it. So maybe they'll start doing that in future generations here. Could even be that they did it on the RedMagic 6R or the 7, sorry. Because I know the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 supports some of the new camera processing features that they're licensing, but I don't know.
I'm not seeing it. Like it's not horrible. Like also they kind of cheapened out a little bit because the RedMagic 6 series had a Sony IMX686 64 megapixel sensor, pretty solid chip that's got good software support and general well-tuned imaging from multiple manufacturers. And they went to some, 0.7 micron sensor instead, which is like maybe an OmniVision or a Samsung, and it's definitely lesser. It's still 64 on paper, but the pixels are smaller. And so in daylight, it's fine. You start doing zoom, it falls apart after like 3x, 4x. And because they're not even doing any kind of intelligent AI-based zooming, which everybody else pretty much is doing. Xiaomi's doing it on $200 phones right now. On their 108 megapixel sensors, they're actually delivering AI like, not quite as good as super zoom or whatever it is on Pixel, but almost that. And it pays off. And then they're not doing any of that. They're basically just like, averaging pixels, right? And then the other thing is low light. Like you pretty much have to shoot in night mode to get anything that resembles something out of like a Snapdragon flagship from even a year or two ago. And then if you shoot without night mode, it's just like, as I said, like a bad Moto phone that costs $200. It's sad. But, look, it's not what you buy those phones for. I get it. But wouldn't it be nice if, for those of you who are budget conscious, who can't buy an iPhone to game, wouldn't it be nice to spend that $629, get your 5G, get your Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, and, oh, look at that. I was able to take some decent pictures when I went to the restaurant with my friends after the esports game. Oh, well. Anyway, I could go on. What other gaming phones have you played with?
I actually haven't played with any since the Qualcomm demo at the summit last December, the handheld, which I cannot remember the name of. I don't know why. That was the last.
Co-made with Razer?
It was, yeah. And that thing was very sweet. And I went into it thinking, oh, this is going to be super dumb. Because like, I was a big critic of gaming phones in general.
And I was a critic, Ryne, of anything?
Yeah. But I sat down and played with it for like about 10 minutes. And like just playing with it in that time period changed my mind. I was like, okay, this is kind of cool. Like, it's not going to be a Switch. I doubt it's going to attract the really high-end developer effort right off of the bat. but there was some potential there. You could tell the performance was like miles better than what you can get off of the Switch. Between that approach upmarket, or I should say, between the approach that Qualcomm is doing to bring phone gaming up into the portable level, and between Steam's efforts to bring with their portable unit down from the PC gaming, I'm really curious to see in the next year or two how all of that's going to pan out, and whether we're going to see a bigger victory from scaling down or scaling up. So I think gaming phones are right on the edge of that as well, because it's sort of the same moving up from below strategy.
I kind of feel that, yes, you're right. And more so, the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 is the first chip where I really feel like it's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. Like, the 888 was thermally a little critical, but it didn't really quite deliver the absolute oomph you needed. The 8 Gen 1 is reaching iPhone 13 levels of performance in some cases, but, it can also give you tons of battery life and be super chill if it has to be. Chill literally, but also chill, run at less energy and less, power. And that to me is the first time I think we've really seen such a dichotomy, because if you start actively cooling this thing with a fan or the proper multi-layer, passive cooling that RedMagic is using, they went in great depth, and they went way over my head. It's like graphene and a whole bunch of stuff in there. And I'm like, if you start doing that, that thing can come close to some serious oomph. That's why I think this handheld Razer thing, I know it's running a different platform from Qualcomm, but I'm seeing, imagine if they tweaked the 8 Gen 1 and renamed it and put a fan on it and said, with a fan on it, this is what we can do. That thing had a fan, right? So yeah. I think this is kind of where we're going. Now, I hate to be that person, but I'd like to remind everybody in the room, engineers in particular, that the Apple M1 chips still blow everything like that out of the water without a fan, in, mind you, a laptop form factor. But I could totally see Apple making a game system or a even game set-top box with some M1 or A15 Bionic derivative that would still eat the pants off of the Snapdragon 8 Gen 1, simply because you pretty much have to cool that chip right now to really get the most out of it. So that sounds very Intel to me, That sounds like it's not mobile anymore at this point.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of this, it's going to be curious to see which approach works best, especially as ARM scales for, higher TDPs and active cooling is necessary. One thing I will mention is the Qualcomm portable that was made with Razer. Although they're marketing it under another name, I was told, not from Qualcomm, I was told by someone who I trust in the matter, that it's actually just a Snapdragon 888. So the portable chip that's in the unit they developed with Razer is just an 888.
Okay, but it's cooled, right?
Yeah. Oh, yes, it's actively cooled. Absolutely.
Yeah. That's what I meant. Fan. Okay, that makes sense. And maybe that's that's it. Then that's just the prototype of the same thing they're going to do with an 8 Gen 1, renaming it.
Could be
a bespoke product. I mean, I'm not surprised to hear that. Yeah, let's see. I've played with most of the RedMagics. I've played with the early Razers, the Razer original and the second gen. And I've played with the first two or maybe first three ROG phones. And then I haven't since then. And I've never played with any of the Black Sharks.
They look the coolest with those magnetic treaters. Yeah, I of all of them, if I was to try to play with one that came out in the last year or two, it would probably be the new Black Shark 4 Pro, because the idea of those magnetic triggers, having used so many units with the capacitive triggers that suck.
Yeah,
I really want to see if those are actually any good, and the tactile feedback and what it's like.
Physical triggers. And then the other thing was Lenovo, the Legion phone. I haven't seen it. It exists. Obviously, I've seen plenty of videos from my friends over on YouTube. But it's intriguing to me that they also, joined that party. And of course, Poco as well, which is funny because we have Black Shark, which is Xiaomi, but Poco has been making some Poco branded affordable gaming phones, like mid-range specs, like with Dimensity chips and stuff. And theirs, I think, was that the phone? Correct me if I'm wrong. Was that the phone that had the trigger buttons that would physically raise up with little, had a little slider on it? It was, you slid it and clunk, they would raise out of the body of the phone. So when you didn't need them, they didn't protrude and you could put it in your pocket more conveniently. It was something like that.
That's pretty cool. I was unaware of that.
And then I think another company, and I want to say either Legion or ROG, so either Lenovo or Asus did the electric triggers that raised. Do you remember that? Which phone was that?
I think the black, maybe I'm wrong, but I think the Black Shark ones are they used to lift and lower, or do they on the most recent one? Because it was like magnetic, some sort of magnetic action, or am I wrong?
I don't know. That's the thing. We have to look it up, folks. If you know, let us know on Twitter, because I don't want to just Google it right now. But I mean, there are some cool things happening. And I'm not a big fan of gamer aesthetic, but I have to say the transparent RedMagic 7 that I have, it's mostly transparent. Now, everything under that transparent layer of glass is really not real. Like it's like they have these plastic covers over the real parts, and the plastic covers are stenciled with like fake circuit board traces and a fake Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 chip, and it's all very well done. But the things that are real under that transparent back are the fan. You can see it clearly. It's also LED backlit, which is cool. It's 4 colors. And then it also has the real screws that hold together everything. So it is interesting. It's full of little stenciled text bits. They say things like 20,000 RPM fan and 64 megapixel AI camera, and
obsessed with specs that don't actually matter in terms of a gaming phone. Yeah. It's
kind of quaint, I know some people get off on this because the gaming aesthetics obviously exists for a reason, but man, if you want something that stands out, once you have the fan backlit and you're holding it in your hand and the RedMagic logo is lighting up, it's breathing in red, and you're holding this to your ear while taking a phone call, people are going to notice, let me tell you.
I hate that ostentatious crap. It drives me nuts.
So do I, but I just want to give them some love, okay? There are some people who are going to love that stuff, so,
That's true.
But yeah, but I think you're right. The Black Sharks are the best looking ones. They're ostentatious, but I think they're doing it tastefully. I don't know if that's possible, but
they're a little more understated than some of the others. It's still sort of that, too extreme gaming vibe, but yeah, it's a slightly more toned down compared to the RedMagic, I think.
So speaking of the Black Shark 4 Pro, it's coming to the US and Europe after coming out in the rest of the world, a long time ago, back in 2021 sometime. And it's got an 888, not the 8 Gen 1. But if you're looking for something and it's a little more affordable than RedMagic 7, which is already pretty affordable, then I think you should check it out. There you go. That's my public service announcement, my PSA for the day. Do you want to switch to talking about the elephant in the we do not understand what's going on with this branding and marketing room, which is Oppo and OnePlus? Because every time I think I'm scratching my head and I should maybe stop and just accept that it's weird, something else comes along that makes it weirder.
Yeah, it's such an odd situation, and I'm not sure OnePlus even understands really what they're doing anymore under the new organizational effort. I don't know.
I don't want to say this. I don't want to be mean because I have a lot of respect, but I think Pete has lost the plot a little bit. Or if there is a plot, it is still very hard for us to see where it's going. Yeah. I should rewind and not say this because, look, it's not that I'm upset or worried about Pete. Pete can take the criticism. It's just more, I'm rewinding to the early days of COVID. I'm in my camper van, my Volkswagen camper, and I'm traveling up to Seattle. It's lovely. It's our first long road trip on COVID. We've stocked up with groceries that we're not have to interact with anyone. We can cook in the van, eat in the van, and I'm working. Of course, every day I'm sitting down with my laptop and I'm typing and writing and doing some work. And I had a Reno 5 Pro with me from Oppo. At the time, that was their flagship mid-ranger. And I loved it. It was a really nice phone, except it was the cheapest, nastiest, ugliest fit and finish CMF build materials colors that you can imagine. Actually, the color was awesome. It was this beautiful blue. But I was looking at it thinking to myself, this is 2 years ago. I'm thinking to myself, what happened to you, Oppo? The Reno series was affordable flagship premium mid-range, aluminum and glass, nicely made, well-spec'd mid-range phones. And here we are. This thing feels like it should be a Realme phone, and it costs the price of an Oppo phone, and it's plastic all around. It's a good phone, but you're not trying hard enough. And what I'm seeing right now is a lot of that kind of cultural malaise coming back, but for OnePlus. And I'm pointing that out because I think Oppo has recovered. See, I've got the Reno 7 Pro here, aluminum frame, glass back, some really nice specs for the money. And now I can understand the justifiable pricing that, the Renos have always commanded a little more in the mid-range because they were always a little better. And now they're back to that. So kudos for that. But I think OnePlus, what's going on? Okay, first of all, we get the OnePlus 10 Pro in China only with ColorOS. And we still haven't heard anything from OnePlus about a global launch. Even though there were rumors we were going to hear about a global launch this week with Nord CE 2. And, I'm going to MWC and they told me, you can come by our booth. We will have the OnePlus 10 there. You can take some photos. But I'm like, great. Everyone and their friend on YouTube has ordered a Chinese version or somehow borrowed from D-Brand or whatever, a Chinese version of the OnePlus 10 Pro and has already quote unquote reviewed it. You kind of took the wind out of our sails there, Pete. Yeah, I know it's not Pete.
In terms of coverage, I don't anticipate, given how late they were to debut them in the US market, that we're going to get a ton of attention. And most people they've come to a determination based on the current software situation, which, itself is still kind of confusing. The OSs were merging, and we know that the current ones have a shared code base, and yet the merger actually won't happen until the next release. So what's going on? Like you said, they've lost the plot. They don't know what they're doing.
It's very evolutionary. That's the other thing. The phone cosmetically looks good, and I want to believe that the cameras are better because now there's an extra year of Hasselblad partnership. But what I'm seeing here, the choice of sensors, for example, no longer have that awesome 50 megapixel ultra wide, and I see the leaked and rumored specs for the Oppo Find X5 Pro. There's rumor of in-body stabilization and all kinds of crazy stuff for the cameras, and IMX766 50 megapixel, super awesome sensors. And I'm like, seriously? So that's why I'm kind of holding my breath for an Ultra, because there's been rumors of an Ultra, a 10 Ultra. That'll be the North American flagship that's going to compete with the S22 Ultra, and maybe they can undercut it in price and we're all very happy. Because I personally don't care that OnePlus is trying to make phones that compete with the best. I just want them to make these phones with good software at a slightly lower price. That's all I want. Right.
And that loops back around to our issue with the gaming phones, and that is that software is expensive. And if OnePlus keeps wanting to try to compromise in different ways to, I don't know what necessarily their motivation is, if it's purely based on money, or if it's just that they want to decrease overhead costs with by developing things together with Oppo. But if they want to debut something at an ultra level flagship in the US, the current software will not work. That is a guaranteed failure.
100%. And so, now we're having rumors this week of a OnePlus 10 non-Pro. And based on how crappy, I'm sorry, but it was, the OnePlus 9 non-Pro was last year. I am sorry. I know it's been, 8 months or something, and I'm still butthurt about the plastic frame, although that's less of an issue because fine. But the lack of OIS on a good sensor that is Hasselblad branded. Who the hell at OnePlus approved that? Moreover, who the hell at Hasselblad didn't put a big stop sign in people's faces? Yeah, I know it's money, but I'm just saying.
Yeah, I I'm curious to see how this is going to pan out. I am actually slightly excited more excited for OnePlus's mid-range stuff because I really see them as separately from their own. I'll be upfront. Their own repeated decisions that result in failure. I'm really curious to see how they're going to impact the U.S. market as a historical customer of MediaTek. And I really like to see, you and I have talked about this before, I really want to see more competition in the U.S. chipset space. And I think MediaTek is poised to really bust out of the mid-range and into the high end. And OnePlus, if they start using more MediaTek parts, as they have in the past, they could be a vehicle for this.
Absolutely. Amen to that. I'll tell you what. As much as I bag on the Oppo, OnePlus weirdness, marketing, what's the strategy? Where are we going here? And the last year's flagship being kind of meh, and clearly this year so far being kind of meh as well. I was blown away by the Nord 2 last year. Like, we didn't get it, but I managed to get OnePlus to send me one. Hey, look at it. 50 megapixel Sony IMX766 with OIS when the 9 didn't have OIS. Like, come on, right? Okay, and get this. MediaTek Dimensity 1200. It was rocking. That phone was so good. The software on that was Oxygen, but using the ColorOS code base. So it was actually the first merged one. And frankly, yes, it's not the Oxygen we had on the OnePlus 7 Pro, which is probably the best Oxygen we ever had, or maybe the 8 Pro. But it definitely didn't upset me or bug me at all. It was solid. And so, I see that phone and that price point that we're selling it at in other markets, and I'm saying this should be a T-Mobile carrier phone, because this could be like an iPhone SE destroyer or a Galaxy A series competitor, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it blew everything away, like in terms of specs for that price point. So that's the real OnePlus I expect to see. But then I saw what Realme was doing, and Realme was doing the same thing for about the same price in other markets. So, this is actually bring Realme into it here is really important, because I feel like as much as I'm on board with what you're saying, especially for the US market, where they've established the brand, especially on the N series Nords, which are the North American Nords, I think that's valid, but Realme is really the new OnePlus. If you look at Realme's lineup right now, all the way up to the GT2 Pro or whatever, the high-end Snapdragon 8 Gen 1 phone they have, all the way down to the most recent one I got that we discussed last week, the Realme 9 Pro Plus. I know the name is crazy. Ryne, hold on to your kneecaps. Let me describe this to you for a second. $350 phone, actually $335. Okay, MediaTek Dimensity 920, okay, 90 Hertz OLED, okay, Sony IMX766 with optical image stabilization, $335.
That's not a bad price. But
it's a great phone. It is.
Can you get it in the US with US band support? Because that's the issue.
No, it's basically the same as any Oppo and Realme I've imported. It works on. Well, it has, I think, band N2 or N5, but AT&T, that's an AT&T band, basically. But AT&T doesn't, certify, that has whitelisted, so you can't use it. It does LTE on AT&T. On T-Mo, it sees 5G. It gives you the 5G indicator when you actually run tests, it's LTE, because it's connected via an LTE network, but it sees that there's 5G availability. And then it drops to HSPA Plus on T-Mo quite a bit. Oof. So it's missing LTE bands for that as well. But look, that's also true of the Oppo Find X3 Pro last year that I used for 3 months. It's a flagship, and I could not always get 5G on T-Mobile. I was getting HSPA Plus and LTE a lot of times. So, I mean, yeah, that's an issue. But I'm saying, like, not everybody listening here is based in the US, And so
True.
if you're kind of a camera person, a camera-centric person, and you don't want to spend a lot of money right now, the cheapest non-iPhone you can buy with OIS that has a good sensor and a really good imaging stack all the way across, good results, good software for the imaging, is this Realme 9 Pro Plus, the Plus particularly. Can't get the other ones, they don't have OIS. But the only other phone I can think of at that price point with OIS right now that's not an iPhone is the TCL 20 5G or whatever from last year. And that, the imaging, it has the hardware, but the software, the imaging stack is is TCL. It's not as bad as Moto, but not great. So,
Yeah.
whereas here you're basically getting BBK Group's best for $335. So, Realme, I think, is the one I want. Obviously, I don't think it's going to come to the US. But if I had to pick a BBK Group right now, product line that I feel really is representing the old OnePlus, it's Realme. So
Yeah, that would be nice. Just more competition in the US market, period, would be nice with all the consolidation we've seen. Loss of LG, OnePlus pulling a OnePlus.
Well, TCL at least has come to kind of fill the gap in some ways.
I had expected more from TCL, kind of. When they first debuted their new hardware, I was like, oh, this is great. They've got all that experience in TVs. They're going to start making phones in the mid-range. They'll work their way up market. This is going to be a great entrance, great for the competition in the market, great for customer choice. They haven't been doing enough. They've been moving so slowly. They're still stuck in the mid-range. I don't know. I had expected them to have bigger plans than they seem to.
I think this is actually we should take an aside and have this discussion about Samsung and the fact that we have a duopoly of Apple and Samsung now in the high end, and it's going to be hard to break for anyone. So I don't want to give TCL too much of the hard time on that, simply because even Moto can't break it, and they've been doing flagships on and off for years. I mean, the Moto X, come on, like that was a flagship back in the day, and people loved it. I mean, everyone played in the flagship space. OnePlus did. Now they're no longer competitive. LG, I mean, some of their phones were incredible at the high end.
The thing is that it doesn't seem to be the quality of the phones that even really matter, because we've had some relative stinkers out of Samsung, even as their growth continued. So it's just marketing and retail partnerships.
It's actually something else I'm come to realize. You're right. 100% is marketing, but it's also the carriers who do not want, they basically want to give you, like everything in the US, Republicans versus, Democrats, like iPhone versus, Android. You only get two choices. Our brains are size of peas. We're stupid people who can't make decisions if we have more than two choices. I hate it. I hate it. But at the same time, I'm seeing that happening real. And you know what? I think it's not just marketing with Samsung. It's carriers to some extent, but it's also, how is it that Samsung, every time they launch a new product, anything that's expensive, has trade-in offers that are unbelievable? How can do they subsidize that themselves? Because
I'm sure they did for a while, but have you noticed? I don't know if you've been following the trade-in offers over the last 3 years, because I looked at them when we were covering the changes. I noticed that they were offering more money for the standard version of the Galaxy, the original Galaxy Flip, than the fancy whatever Tom Brown edition. They would actually give you $50 less for the one that cost $2,000. But they've been cutting back the amount that they subsidize the trade-ins for. I know there's that really amazing AT&T trade-in. Anyone who's on AT&T, anyone who's listening, go do this tomorrow. If you have any Samsung phone released in the last 10 years, they will give you a free S21. Just go do it.
S21 or S22?
Oh, sorry, S22. But yeah, just take advantage of that right now, because that's a great deal. Galaxy S2 sitting in a drawer you haven't touched for 8 years, they'll take it. You get a free S22. Are
you kidding? No. Do you have to be a customer or what?
I think you have to be a customer.
I'm doing it. I don't really need an S22, but screw it. I might as well have one around.
Yeah.
And then I'll call David Kogan and get it unlocked and call it a day, because, the unlockers got you covered.
There you go.
Free advertising.
But I do think they subsidized it more than they used to. It seemed like there was, you might remember last year and a little bit the year before, there were rumors that Samsung was being investigated internally. They do these regular reviews to see how the different divisions are doing, and they did one early for the mobile division because I guess revenue was falling, costs were increasing with the development of folding phones and everything else. And so they sort of placed the division under review. And I think as a result of that, as a result of their declining flagship sales, and as a result of concerns potentially regarding profitability, they have dropped some of the subsidies for the trade-ins. If you look at the values now compared to the values a year ago, 2 years ago, they're giving less for phones than they used to compared to fair market value. It's still a decent value. It's still better trade-in than Google will offer or Apple will offer, but they aren't doing this sort of actually crazy trade-in values they did before, where you could get a phone for $200 trading in something that was 4 years old.
Interesting. Yeah, but it's still like one of the ways I think that they've really eaten OnePlus's lunch and others, right? Like, because, you know, even I, who is not the biggest diehard Samsung fan, I just reviewed the S22 Ultra and Plus for Hot Hardware last week, and we covered that with Tech Me Out last week on the show. But, you know, it's like, they're great phones. Even I, who is a cynical, jaded tech journalist who's like, oh, Samsung again, roll eyes. You know, like I kind of want to hate them, but I can't anymore. The S22 Ultra is a massively good phone. Like, yeah. I cannot fault people for walking into a store and going, yeah, I'm an Android user. I'm buying the Samsung this year. You know, because that's it. Like, they're getting their family plan. They're on Verizon for a decade. They're all going to get a good deal. They don't care about unlocked, whatever. Like, I cannot be mad at them for it. Like, it is such a good phone. Holy crap balls.
And that exactly, the situation you just described, the anecdote you shared, the image of the family man coming in and buying a phone at the carrier store perfectly describes exactly why Samsung is successful. And that is that they have the marketing budget to make sure that everybody's aware of who they are and their products every time they land. And secondarily, they have the retail channel partnerships. You go to the carrier stores and Samsung's in every single store. And that's one of the few reasons that we're seeing OnePlus grow at the rate that they are. If you've seen some of the recent reports out of Counterpoint, Counterpoint said that they've grown something like 150% or 200% in the last 2 years in the US. And that overlaps perfectly, coincides like just precisely with their partnership with T-Mobile.
Absolutely.
So all of their growth that they're seeing has to do with being in retail channels that they weren't able to do before.
In a T-Mobile store right now, you still won't find it until you go to the back of the room. Whereas the Samsung and iPhones are going to be in your face. Even the A series is going to be in your face before you get to an N200 5G, which, by the way, is a phenomenal little phone, okay? So I'm actually super excited about the N series. I hear rumors, bear with me, I've been hearing these rumors for a while now, of an N20 5G to replace the N10, which was okay, but not great.
Yeah.
The 100 I never played with. It was a 4G phone. The 200 5G though, yum, considering. But if you can get me the specs for the 20 5G would be similar to the CE2 5G that was launched in Europe. I'll link to John Porter's review on The Verge because it's a really good review and I really like John. He's been on my show. He has a really good insight being UK based on, you know, the kind of the other side of OnePlus, the one we don't see because we don't get these phones. And they just launched a C2 and the N20 5G would be very similar. It would have AMOLED. It would have, you know, a decent camera system. It would be definitely a step up from the N200 5G, but still be really affordable, less than $500. And, you know, if we're not going to get the Nord 3, which, you know, obviously the Nord 2 was awesome, but that was last year. If we're not going to get that, I'm saying like get us something, you know, that's close because if it's not flagships you're after in OnePlus, I get it. That's fine. But just give us something that we can sink our teeth into. There is no phone right now in the lineup that I can point my fingers at that is in that price range. Like I can say in the US buy the N200 5G and I say in the UK right now buy the Nord 2 from last year. But there's, you know, unless you want to go flagship. But there's nothing else. And there's a big gap between the N200 5G, which is $200, right, roughly, and the all the way up to the OnePlus, you know, 10 Pro or whatever. So the Nord non-C, non-N series is kind of what I would love to see T-Mobile do. That's just me.
If we're offering our advice to OnePlus and T-Mobile, I would
Please
also.
Do.
My 2 cents, please reconsider this software rebase and go back to rolling your own. Do not do this unification. Do not do a unified approach for 2 different markets that need 2 different things out of software. Software that's going to be popular and loved and appreciated by the sensibilities of Chinese consumers is probably not going to be appreciated and loved by US consumers. So please go back to the old Oxygen OS or at least maintain independent development. Don't force these things to be one and the same.
You're dreaming, my friend. It's never going to happen.
I know.
I'm sorry. So this C2, I just want to touch on it quickly because John's review, the reason I picked it is because I think he nailed everything on it. And I can only say that because of my experience with all the Oppo phones and the OnePlus. I don't have this phone. I don't know for sure. But it reeks of me as a rebranded Realme phone of some kind. Not even an Oppo. I know cosmetically it looks more like an Oppo than a Realme, but this is reeking of a Realme rebrand spec-wise and price-wise. And that's not a bad thing, but it's really sad that this is the first OnePlus phone. The N10 5G was a little Oppo-ish to me, but the N200 5G felt very OnePlus. So it's possible there's a CMF, again, material, color, finishes here, combination that can be OnePlus, and this is not it on this OnePlus C2. This is an Oppo CMF with a Realme spec sheet at a Realme price point. And again, it's BBK part spinning here. You know, somehow Xiaomi does the part spinning thing to death and manages to pull it off. BBK, please look at what Xiaomi's doing. If you're going to part spin to death, please do it right. That's all I'm going to say. Give each brand its identity. Poco does not look like Redmi and does not look like Xiaomi. Yet, they are spec-wise so similar on so many fronts. I love that they have their own brand identity, though. It really makes a difference, you know? So yeah, I don't know. What do you think of this phone? I mean, you haven't touched it, but you saw the review, so...
I haven't touched it. It looks interesting. I'm not a big fan of OnePlus's changing industrial design, especially when it comes to these, everyone's taking this route of, well, the cameras need to be so big. Let's stop trying to hide them. Let's make them a feature. Let's draw it out. And, I mean, you saw Zach's torture test the other day where he bent a OnePlus 10 Pro completely in half. So I'm clearly they're compromising in terms of engineering when they're trying to come up with the CMF that you describe. And like you said, like all they're doing is tossing a shade of Nord blue on this and considering it a OnePlus phone, really. And I wish that they would go back to doing a more unique. They were on track to have their own branding. I feel like starting around the OnePlus 6, OnePlus 7, and there was a direct lineage of, you know, that central camera back and the horizon line top and bottom. But they've become so messy choosing pieces, like you say, out of the BBK part spin, that they haven't kept up that sort of consistency in design that they did when they only had one or two models. Now it's just all over the place. You can kind of tell a OnePlus phone by like the color and maybe the camera bump, but that's about it. The Hasselblad branding does more for me to indicate that something's going to be a OnePlus phone than just about any other identifying characteristic.
Yeah, but the Hasselblad branding is now on the Oppo Find X5 Pro. It's like Pete was like, no, you can't have that either, OnePlus. Yeah. It's like, I hate to say this, but does Pete have an issue with the company he started? Because, you know, he's destroying OnePlus right now. And I think that's what Carl left, because Carl didn't want to have anything to do with it. That's kind of the more, like, I kind of jokingly said that last year because I wasn't seriously thinking that. But the more I'm thinking it, and again, I'm not upset at, you know, Pete. He's a businessman. He's proven that he can run a business successfully. And if that's what you want to do, just have Oppo phones in the US in the mid-range, essentially under the OnePlus brand instead of Oppo. That's okay. I mean, that's your prerogative. I just don't think it's where you should be. I think that in the same way as you make excellent versions of phones for India, you should be making excellent versions of phones for the US and for Europe under the OnePlus brand. But that's just me, you know?
So one interesting anecdote that I can share, and I don't know necessarily how truthful it is. I generally trust the source that told it to me, but I don't have all the particulars. So one interesting thing about the breakup between Pete and Carl has to do with the Nord. I was told, the original Nord, that apparently Carl sort of took the authority under himself. You remember how they talked about how it was developed in a very, very small period of time in Northern Europe, as opposed to, you know, in China, where all of the other OnePlus products were presumably developed over a much longer time period. I guess he sort of just kind of did it. Again, you know, I don't know how truthful this is, but I was told he just, under his own authority, sort of in secret, created the Nord, and that might have had something to do with his departure as well.
But it nailed it. The original Nord was a masterpiece. And the Nord 2, he had nothing to do with it. It was also a masterpiece. I don't get it. Like, some people at OnePlus are still doing it, right? You know?
One would assume.
I don't know. But you know, the other thing I want to point out about the C2 before we wrap up and continue with a bunch of news items is that the review, you'll see one of the photos is really telling here of the display. So I have a few BBK group phones here, Realme, Oppo, that landed in the last 2 or 3 months. I'd say since CES. And then I have a few Xiaomi phones as well, Poco and Redmi's, that have landed, and that are also really on the affordable range, like $200 to $300 price point. And one big change I'm seeing is everybody switching to OLED. That started last year, right? At that price point. But there's a cheaper variety of OLED that's surfacing, and it's not bad in terms of quality. It's still an OLED. There's no complaints. But there's one negative with all of these this year. They are not necessarily the highest refresh rate, for one thing. They're 90 hertz typically, maybe sometimes 120. But they are cheaper insofar that they all have a chin, meaning that somehow there is a need for some space to connect the display to the motherboard.
And they're rigid. They're rigid panels, so you can't bend it.
Probably. But the point is that that's why you look at this phone, you're like, why so much chin? This is not an LCD. And a lot of them, well, this one I think has an in-display fingerprint sensor, but a lot of them also have a power button-based fingerprint sensor, capacitive instead of in-display. So I think what's happening here is that, we're pushing OLED downer in the price range, which is great because I want to see that, because the displays are really good still, folks. I'm not complaining, but it's just the compromise is, to keep that price point, you get you get more bezel at the bottom. So you're seeing that here. It's particularly obvious here. And, it's obvious on my Realme 9 Pro Plus, the one with OIS I was just raving about. It's also obvious on the Note series, the Note 11 that just came out from Redmi. Some of the upcoming Poco phones I can't talk about. You'll see. But yeah, it's something. I don't know. I mean, whatever. I suppose at $200, you're just going to be happy if you get an OLED, right?
Yeah, I was going to say, like, it's a bummer there's a chin, but at least you're getting an OLED at that price.
So the last BBK group thing I want to talk about really quickly is that the launch of the IQOO, I don't know how to say that name. IQOO. They've been around forever. They're a Vivo sub-brand. I've got the EQ7 Pro here, which is a BMW branded phone from last year.
Another one?
A Snapdragon 8. They do one every time. Every time they're the top brand version that has a BMW. Like, who was it doing Lamborghini phones? Was it Xiaomi? Yeah. Anyway, the point is, this is also available as a BMW version. But it's interesting because, Ryan, I have a good PR contact at EQ and Vivo, and they keep me in the loop, but I never saw the EQ8. And I thought, maybe they skipped a number, but I Googled it, it existed. So it seems like every 3 months they're launching a new phone, basically. Because the EQ7 I have is Snapdragon 888, has OIS on the cameras. It's a really great phone, honestly. It's really nice. But this thing looks like basically a clone of the Vivo X70 Pro series, but with newer different chips, and it's an India phone, and it's got the gimbal from the Vivo phones, and a nice Samsung GN5 50 megapixel sensor, which is going to be incredible in low light. So I think this is an interesting phone. Of course, you'll never see it anywhere in the West, or maybe in some parts, but still worth noting, right?
Probably.
Do you have any thoughts? I mean, other than do we need a Vivo sub-brand? Is Vivo not obscure enough already?
I don't know. I mean, the Indian market is a unique and really fascinating one. They're so spec-driven. People there upgrade much more frequently than they do in other markets. And they're much more price-conscious. I don't mean they're cheap, but I mean, like, they look at the cost. They have general consumers that look at the spec-to-price ratio in a way that allegedly more sophisticated consumers in the United States don't pay any attention to, which I think is fascinating. They're a much more technical audience. And so looking at this, if you're saying this is, a 3-month later re-release of some other phone that was destined for the market, and they're doing as many models per year as you're saying, that all fits with what little I know about that very interesting market where people are upgrading very, very frequently, and they want these latest specs. So seemingly incremental minor improvements, you rush them to market, but after you've sold all of your product, you're going to sell these again. So I bet it'll work.
What's interesting here is that we're getting a Snapdragon 888 Plus on the top model, and we're getting, so not an 8 Gen 1, we're getting the gimbal cam I mentioned. We're getting 120 watt wire charging, and the first for any EQ phone ever, wireless charging, and not just wireless charging, but BPA Group's 50 watt crazy wireless charging. So, the thing is hot, and the pricing in India is just out of this world. $870 for that thing? Whew.
It's a decent value. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I think there's going to be a regular 9 coming out with potentially a MediaTek chip. This is my my gut feeling, because I thought for sure this had the one of the new Dimensities in it, but maybe it's the 9. I don't know. This is not even, they don't give me stuff under embargo yet at Vivo, so I have no insider info. Unlike other BBK Group areas. Anyway, some other news items. Okay, I had to put this one in here just because we're not going to get this phone in the US. There's no way, because Moto's not going to give us this. Moto's going to keep this to probably Asia and somewhere or another. But the Moto Frontier is rumored to be the super high-end flagship that we always wanted from Moto. And it's going to have a 194 megapixel main sensor.
That's big.
What?
Yeah.
Wait, let's pixel bin this. 16:1?
I don't even know. I'd have to sit down and do the math on that.
I'm doing some math. 194 divide by 16 is it 16? No, it's going to be divide by 4. So we want 48. No, that doesn't make sense. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be divide by 8, right? Yeah, divide by 8. So 194 divide by 8 is 24 megapixels.
That sounds about right.
Anyway, it's got a pixel bin like crazy to get this. I don't see how.
I'm curious to see if there's anything else that's happening in the pipeline, like what Samsung's doing with their multi-frame binning on the S22 Ultra, where you have the, some shots in full res, some in bin res, and you overlay them.
I kind of love this idea. Get the chroma data from the low res version because we're less sensitive to color, and get the luminance, the light data from the high res version, so we get all the detail. Video has been doing that for a long time, even in analog.
Yeah.
Back in the days of VHS, I know I'm dating myself here, but when Super VHS came out, the only thing they improved was the bandwidth. This was all analog on the light signal, not the color signal. And so you got higher res, but in terms of color, you still had the low res color. But it looked so much better simply because basically the pixel, there's no pixels in VHS, but the pixel resolution, it's lines and that. But there you go. I've dated myself now. More importantly, those of you who are analog nerds out there, that was for you, because you know what? All that stuff became digital, and now we're benefiting from it too. But it looks like a beast, right?
It does. It looks fairly capable. I mean, my opinion regarding Motorola. I think that if there is a way,
you just roll your eyes the instant you hear the word Moto.
If there's a way they can shoot themselves in the foot on a given launch, they will. They will find a way to make what is a good product somehow bad or dumb.
Oh, it's so true. I want to love them because they have such good people running a show over there, but their products, I really hope they can give us the Edge 30 Plus or whatever, the one they just launched in some markets, but in the US, I hear rumors that potentially we're getting something, but after last year's really disappointing Edge Plus or whatever it is that they gave us, I was just like, please shoot me now. And, honestly, the last 3 4G phones they sent me, the 22 models, there was the G Plus and the G Power and then the G Stylus 4G.
The pile of them they released last year.
They're all 50 megapixel sensors that are super cheap, like OmniVisions or something. And that plus Moto's complete lack of ability to make a camera to save its life makes it worse than shooting with a 13 or a 16 megapixel sensor on a OnePlus N200 5G,
I believe it.
It's kind of disappointing. I was really hoping, I'm like, 50 megapixel sensor. Maybe they're actually doing something new and exciting. But I mean, look, I don't want to rail on Moto too much.
It's too easy to
do. It's just
too
easy. Exactly.
But they're subsidizing everything off of their mid-range market. The lower end stuff is what sells. You'd hope that one of these days, throwing all of the money that they make off of the one at failed flagship attempts, they'd finally break through. But
yeah, we'll see. Let's talk about OSOM. Is that what it is?
Awesome, yeah.
Awesome. That's the pun. Awesome OV1. Okay, so I need you to take lead on this for just a few minutes. Give us a quick lowdown because we've got to run. But I didn't even hear about this breakout team of essential people creating their own company when it was announced in 2020. And here we are. So fill me in.
So short version, I got to sit down and speak with the two of the founders late last year. And yeah, they're rising from the ashes of what's left of Essential, sans Andy Rubin. He's not involved. And they're building a phone. I got to sit down and talk with them about a couple of the technical details. They didn't have specs to share yet. Details have been trickling out over time. One of the images we saw in the post you referenced recently regarding some new colors indicates it might have wireless charging, but we don't know things like chipset. We don't know things like display, cameras, none of that yet. But speaking to the company, I was told that they're going to be going for very stock-like software approach, not like Moto stock-like, but like potentially partnering with another company. There's been some teasing back and forth on Twitter that makes it seem like Graphene OS might end up inside of it. And they're a well-known ROM. They make a security and privacy-focused ROM for Pixel phones. So that could be one avenue whereby they fulfill that promise. One of the colors for the phones, the Borealis Green, looks a whole lot like Ocean Depths PH1, which was my favorite color combination of any phone ever. Those copper rails and that green, it looked so good.
Agree. Yeah, it looks interesting, and I'm just really happy this is happening. And the more the better. I love these little startups that are doing things like Rumors of Carl and Nothing doing a smartphone. We covered that last week.
That too. Yeah,
I'm super excited about it, but it's logical. Like when I heard he was breaking out to create Nothing, and then there was like earbuds. I'm like, seriously, everybody's making earbuds. Come on, you can do better than that. And don't get me wrong, I have the buds. They're fantastic for the money. I think they're great. But like, I'm more excited about him, especially after he gave us the Nord. That was such a great phone. If you can replicate that. I know he's probably not going to make a lot of money on it, but who makes money on making phones?
Who knows?
Apple?
He's seen the success OnePlus has had now with getting carrier partnerships. He might have the impetus, if it's going to be targeting the U.S. Market first, to get a carrier partnership going. And if that's the case, they'll have everything they need to hit the ground running, because that's really your biggest hurdle, is being on shelves.
100%. Timo, we have high hopes for what you're going to do with Carl. Hint, hint, hint. And then the last bit of item, it's mostly, because I feel Daniel Bader's pain here. I don't really care so much, but there was rumors for a while that we were going to get a 5G BlackBerry phone with a keyboard. And it's just not happening anymore. It's just dead. It's sad. OnwardMobility is a company that based in Austin that acquired the BlackBerry name after TCL was done playing with it. Kind of TCL threw it up in the air, and OnwardMobility caught it, and they were like, we're going to make a keyboard phone Android with 5G. And then that was 2021 or something, or 2020, a while ago. And apparently they shut down. They've gone bankrupt or something, out of business. So one more minute of BlackBerry death.
As dead as the keyboard phone form factor.
So dead, except for Planet Computers. Astro Slide 5G.
Yeah.
Super niche. But look, this is good. I love niche phones. Niche phones are good.
Yeah, to be fair, so do I. I think that it's interesting when companies try to push the envelope and do weird stuff. Some of it sticks, but I don't think that a keyboard is something that's going to stick. We've moved past that.
I think we're all past that. And I think it's all for the better. Just go buy a gaming phone instead, folks. If you want to have a hardship with software and cameras, you can do better than a keyboard phone.
Although bringing things back around to BlackBerry, the dream of a Canadian phone is not dead. OSOM is a Canadian company. They're from
nice.
The French Canada, that one.
Yes, that one over there. We got to keep it at bay, literally Hudson Bay. As a Canadian, I know my geography, okay? Anyway, we should wrap it up on that note.
We can.
Before it gets too silly. Ryne, do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet, all your social media handles and everything else?
Yeah, they can find me at Ryne Hager. That's at RYNEHAGER, because I spell my name funny.
Well, mostly, yes. Yeah. And you should definitely follow Ryne on Android Police as well. Great writing over there.
I do write at Android Police. That's fair. That's an important point to make. I have an employer.
Yes. You are still there. So Folks, definitely comment on Twitter and let us know your questions and feedback. You know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL. That's both on Instagram and on Twitter. That's like the comic book character Tankgirl without the vowels. So, you can hit us up on Twitter or on Instagram. Instagram is really mostly where I put pretty pictures of phones and pretty pictures taken with phones. A lot of pictures of cars since I write car reviews for Tech Radar. So you'll see phones and cars. And if you see the details in the writing, I always tell you which phone I've used to take the photo because I'm a nerd like that. Also, there's a couple of YouTube channels you should subscribe to that are complimentary to this podcast for visuals. You'll see generally unboxings and other things like that. One is youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast and the other one is youtube.com/mobiletechmore. The first is mostly phone related and audio accessory related mostly. And then the second is all the peripheral stuff like home automation, car tech, travel tech, things that interface with a smartphone but don't really neatly fit into phone purely or audio, which are kind of my two passions, photography and audio and phones are the things I go for. So check out those channels. You know how YouTube works. Just like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the little notification bell, and then, of course, comment. Because, even if you want to comment about the podcast, I'll respond to the comments because, you need a place to, a forum, as it were. The podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pocket Casts, everywhere good podcasts can be found. Those of you who know what VHS is can also subscribe via RSS. And then, of course, if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. It really helps with discovery. I'd appreciate it. And finally, some of you are already watching. I know this, but for those of you who aren't, yes, there is a video version of this podcast. And you have to be a patron on Patreon for that. So I want to thank my Patreon community. It's on patreon.com/TNKGRL. That's patreon.com/Tankgirl. If you want to help me out with this podcast, the only way I can really make it happen is with your support. So Patreon is the way to get it. The video version is one of the tiers. You get the video a little earlier than the audio, and you get it a little bit less edited. So you get a little uncut action. And more importantly, there's a Discord server you can join and you help out, which is really great. So consider joining Patreon. And speaking of nice rhymes, I want to thank Adrian L, who joined Patreon. Adrian, Patreon, you see. Thanks so much for joining this week. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Audible. Audible's been with us since the early days, and they're awesome. They're the #1 audiobook platform. And if you're like me and you like to read a lot, it's a great solution to my reading troubles. I'll tell you why. I'm in front of a computer all day long and my eyes get tired. And at the end of the day, when I want to chill out, I don't want to look at another screen again. So I get Audible to read me books, or if I'm on a road trip and I'm driving, generally I'm the driver, I love driving. So I want to be entertained. Everybody else in the car is asleep or whatever. I put an audiobook on. It's great. It keeps me on the edge of my seat. It's great. So check out Audible. They're a great sponsor. If you love books as much as I do, they have a great selection. A lot of books are read by the authors. They have short stories. They have podcasts. They have a whole bunch of stuff. And so you should check it out and help us out. You get a 30-day free trial. You get to keep a book at the end if you want. If you don't want it to join and stay, you still keep a book, so you get a good deal. But I think you will join and you will love it after you try it out for 30 days. The URL for that is audibletrial.com/mobiletech. That's audibletrial.com/mobiletech. So please help them, help us, and all that good stuff. And I want to thank Audible again for being our sponsor. And I want to thank you, Ryne, yet again for being my guest on the show.
It is always fun to be here, Miriam.
100%. We will have you on again at some point soon. And folks, we'll have another podcast next week at some point. I'm not sure exactly when, but it might even be a group podcast with everyone I can rally up in Barcelona. So stay tuned for that, folks. And until then, cheers, everybody.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.